in 1965, a gentleman made a phone call and said that I was being interviewed for a job in New York. And it was probably the toughest thing I had to do, to leave my parents in Chicago. And I didn't even know that this gentleman knew who I was. And I was invited to the Columbia Records Convention in Miami. And as I wanted to meet Clive Davis, I walked up to him at the Diplomat Hotel, and I said, "I'd like to introduce myself to you." And he said, "You're Ron Luxembourg." And that lasting impression of this man who is obviously somebody who I and my family are proud to call a real friend, a mentor, a man that taught me how to return 80 phone calls a day because I used to watch him do it. A man that would call me at 9 o'clock on a Friday night into his office and say, "Okay, what are the priority records for next week?" And he knew every one of them. And to stand in front of him tonight and talk about him is not the easiest thing in the world to do, because those of you who know me, sometimes I'm pretty rough and can tell you like it is as a promotion man, because nobody ever knocked on my door and said, "Now what do you want me to play?" And nobody ever said to me, "Now what do you want me to buy?" But we built an empire that will never, ever be matched. And it's because of him and the people that worked with him and the artists that he had the intuition to sign to this day. And I have to tell a little story. This week I went to see him on Tuesday with a new artist. We sat there and we talked, and he had a half an hour block, and 2 hours later we were still talking because he was showing me the future of what he's involved in. And he talked to me about a young man that I will let him tell you about, because you're in for a treat tonight. I'm in for a treat because I'm able to stand here and tell you about my friend, and a man that we went through the roller coaster together. And there will never be another relationship like he has, or he had, with the people at CBS Records. And I just want you to know that for him to be here tonight, working as hard as he does, with mammoth CDs in his office, and to hear this Aretha Franklin record that he just produced with Aretha, when I heard it on the radio, I had no idea the magnitude of that record until I was in his office, and he doesn't know it, but I stole a copy, of course. And tonight, he's been kind enough to autograph 5 of them, which you'll hear about in a minute. So I just have to tell you that my family wouldn't be my family, my homes wouldn't be my homes, my parents would not have been as proud of their son and their children, all their children, if it wasn't for Clive Davis. To love another man other than my father and my own son and my children, I love that man. So let me show you a little bit about what you're about to see and what we're about to induct into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame. Clive Davis.
From his simple beginnings as a child growing up in Brooklyn to his unparalleled success today, Clive Davis has always kept his ears tuned to the street. What were once the sounds of stickball, punchball, and the roar of the crowds at Ebbets Field are now the sound of today's most popular artists, many of them signed by Clive Davis. His ever-growing passion for music is equaled only by his compassion for mankind. With a unique vitality and energy all his own, Clive Davis continues to have a profound effect on the music world as an innovator, creator, and humanitarian. Over the course of his illustrious career, he's become the industry's most visible and respected spokesman. As the president of Columbia Records from 1965 to 1973, his gutsy foresight thrust the recording industry into the modern era. During that time, it was Davis's keen inner sense for what was happening that brought him to the Monterey Pop Festival.
I found myself at Monterey, and I found that I had what we call ears. I didn't know I had it, and I went somewhat timorously, but I was in the presence of Janis Joplin, and they brought in the holding company, and it ushered into what was a great record company, a new rock era. I will recall it was the rock revolution that would be heard around the world.
That realization led him to sign such legendary artists as Janis Joplin, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Donna, Chicago, Billy Joel, Earth, Wind and Fire, Santana, Aerosmith, and Bruce Springsteen.
You hear so many artists have a lot of nightmare stories about the record business and record, and I've been pretty blessed in the sense that I walked in and it was really wonderful and supportive, and over the years it hasn't sort of gotten, I think, the credit he deserves for what he did for me when I first came in. He really changed the course of my whole life.
He took me aside, put his arm around me, and said, "You're going to be a big star, so keep working at it, and we're going to sign you up, and you're going to have lots of money, and your career is going to explode." And this man had the insight, and I just have to thank him kindly for that. The whole band does, in fact. So thank you, Clive.
Davis also provided the likes of Simon and Garfunkel, Barbra Streisand, Bob Dylan, Sly and the Family Stone, and Miles Davis. The signing of the legendary team of Campbell and Huff and Philadelphia International Records gave birth to the unforgettable Philly sound. His extraordinary achievements as president of Columbia Records were just a prelude to an even bigger challenge in 1975, building a new record company from scratch. As founder and president of Arista Records, Clive Davis created one of the most innovative and successful labels in industry history. During the label's first 25 years, he signed stars such as Barry Manilow, Patti Smith, Dionne Warwick, Aretha Franklin,
Kenny G, Sarah McLachlan, The Grateful Dead, Carly Simon, Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Dido, Annie Lennox.
Clive came to showcase half hour late. He walked in, I sang did what I had to do, and then he left. I didn't think that he was very excited about it or anything, but then I got a call saying that he really wanted to sign me, that he really wanted me.
Davis constantly sought to broaden Arista's musical spectrum and always succeeded. His historic agreement with the country's hottest team of producers, L.A. and Babyface, gave birth to LaFace Records. Clive Davis's fervor to find that special project is matched only by his deep desire to help his fellow man. 1985 was the year Davis began his tireless and ongoing battle in the fight against AIDS. As always, it began with a song. That's what friends are for. From there, Davis personally enlisted Stevie Wonder, Elton John, and Gladys Knight to join Dionne Warwick on the song. The result was a #1 smash and $2 million raised for the cause. In March of 1990, Davis turned Arista's 15th anniversary into the now historic AIDS benefit concert at New York's Radio City Music Hall. The event raised another $2 million. In August of 2000, Clive Davis announced the formation of J Records. In partnership with BMG, this instant major represents the single largest label deal in the history of the business.
J Records quickly became the buzz of the industry, with platinum success story after success story, beginning with Alicia Keys, whose 4 albums have sold over 23 million copies worldwide and won 11 Grammys. His triumphant success at J led to Davis being named chairman of the RCA Music Group, a bold new chapter, a fresh new challenge, heading the label steeped in tradition to greater glory. And in short order, he made his presence felt with blockbuster albums like Christina Aguilera, Foo Fighters, Dave Matthews, Velvet Revolver, and Avril Lavigne. He inherited the American Idol franchise and made it his own with chart-topping albums by Kelly Clarkson, Fantasia, Clay Aiken, Carrie Underwood, and Daughtry, whose self-titled debut was the biggest-selling album from a new artist in 2007. His reunion albums with Barry Manilow, the greatest songs of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, have all soared to the top of the charts. In 2008, Clive Davis was appointed Chief Creative Officer for all of Sony Music Entertainment, a change in operational responsibility, but an expansion of the artist he would now creatively be responsible for. This marks yet another reunion for Clive Davis, this one with the company he started his illustrious career with.
Clive Davis once said, "Experience has taught me to speak up again and again. With right on one side, the voice is eventually heard. A passion for music, a compassion for mankind. Through his love for music, Clive Davis has not only brought joy to so many, but the heartfelt hope and help of a friend."
How's that for a few hits, huh? And I was the lucky guy that got to work a lot of them with him. Between 1955 and 1999, our next guest placed 69 singles in the Billboard Hot 100 charts. To induct Clive Davis into the Long Island Music Hall of Fame, please give it up for the incredible Dionne Warwick.
Well, the hour is growing now, and most of what I have been given to say, shown and said to, I'm going to do it anyway. Clive Davis and I have been friends for close to 4 decades now, and it always amazed me as to how he had that innate way of finding incredible talents. Some he started, and those that he started, I'm going to give you a few names that might be familiar to your ear. Janis Joplin, Bruce Springsteen, Blood, Sweat and Tears, Chicago, Santana, Aerosmith, Billy Joel, Earth, Wind and Fire, Barry Manilow, Patti Smith, and my cousin, of course, Whitney Houston. Alicia Keys, and now Jim Morrison. And needless to say, he's had incredible, profound effect on my career, along with a couple of other friends of mine, Aretha Franklin, the Grateful Dead, the Kinks, Sly and the Family Stone, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, Weather Report, the Eurythmics, Carly Simon, Luther Vandross, Rod Stewart, and so many, many others. I will also give you some names that would not ordinarily have been associated with them, but he has that creative energy that impacts a lot of eras of music. He has gone to Nashville, and with Alan Jackson, Brooks and Dunn, Brad Paisley, and before that even, Johnny Cash, Ray Price, George Jones, and Tammy Wynette. Clive has been actively in the midst of the R&B hip-hop revolution, first with Kenny Gamble and Leon Hawks, Philadelphia International Records, the OJs, Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, featuring Teddy Pendergrass, and who can forget Billy Paul's Me and Mrs. Jones. Well, then there was his landmark signing of Gil Scott-Heron, and his founding of L.A. Reid's and Kenny Edmonds' LaFace Records, with Outkast, TLC, Usher, Tony Braxton, and Pink. And finally, his renowned partnering with Puffy, Sean Combs of Bad Boy Records, and his electrifying roster of notorious B.I.G., Puffy himself, Maze, and 112. Now, I know I shared a lot, but to leave any of this out on an occasion such as this would be unthinkable. And of course, all this has qualified him for many Lifetime Achievement Awards, induction into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and winner of 5 Grammy Awards. He has given back tirelessly to AIDS, cancer, leukemia, and diabetes. There's another page here with it. There you go. His $10 million hit. $10 million. That gift to NYU's Tisch School, establishing the Clive Davis Institute for Contemporary Music, has been pioneering in providing education and development for those looking to a career in recorded music. So it is with an extreme pleasure for me to be here to pay tribute to this very special human being. Not only for all of his incredible accomplishments, but because of our very special friendship. After all the hits I enjoyed with Backrack and David, I was ready at one point in life to give it all up until I sat in my dressing room in Los Angeles while doing a television show with Clive. And I let him know that I was ready to give his business up. And he looked at me and he said, well, guess what? You may be ready to give the business up, but the business is not ready to give you up. I had always believed that there were many more songs, many more hits in my future. And so we began with a monster hit and a Grammy Award for it. I know I'll never love this way again. And another Grammy Award for Deja Vu. And then there was Heartbreaker and No Night So Long and How Many Times Can We Say Goodbye and Love Power and of course the classic That's What Friends Are For. Just to remind most of you about That's What Friends Are For, all of the royalties and profits contributed to 85% of the entire revenue that got Ambar up on its feet for the first 3 years of its existence. We're very much attuned, he and I. We loved every minute of it. For over 2 decades, we became best friends and comrades in arms. We were always there for each other. So on this very, very special night, it is with a great personal pride, joy, happiness, and respect that I induct my dear friend, Mr. Clive Davis, into the Long Island Music Hall.
Thank you so much to Ronald Luxembourg. Thank you to my darling friend Dionne Warwick. And I want to say one thing before Dionne leaves. The Long Island Music Hall of Fame will be much more comfortable when Miss Dionne Warwick is inducted into it. Tonight is very, very, very special. I relate to Long Island. It's part of my DNA. Yes, my roots were in Brooklyn. I lived there. I lived there from birth until the age of 18, when, upon the death of both my parents, within a year of each other, I went to live with my sister in Bayside, Queens. And I lived there for the 3 remaining years that I had at NYU. I got married 3 years later, and I raised my early family in Roslyn, Long Island. So tracing it back, and I know Brooklyn is not technically part of Long Island, but my childhood summers, I started out at Brighton Beach, and I started out at it's where my grandparents lived. And I really love steeplechase, and I love the cyclone and Broadway. And then stretched out a little and went to Reese Park, went to the Rockaways, went to Joe's Beach. And later, when unexpectedly, through good luck, music entered my life, and I was able to afford each summer for the next 22 years in the Hamptons. So I am indeed a citizen of Long Island, and I'm personally very touched, moved, and honored by tonight's event. You know, by total, again, coincidence, I'm going to depart a little. Seeing through the video the artists that I've been involved with and the meaningful relationships, the wonder that music came into my life, became my life's passion. Never knew that I would be in music. Never knew I might have had a natural gift leading to the artists, the songs. It became perhaps the soundtrack of many of your lives. But because this is personal, and so many of you come obviously from Long Island, I did receive a letter last week from a longtime colleague of mine who went through many years with me at Arista Records. And I'm going to excerpt from that letter tonight many thoughts that relate to Long Island, to music, and to the wonderful relationships, the wonderful relationship that each has had with each other. And I hope all of you will find it as relevant as I do. So I quote, "Hey, Clive, I know you knew that there were tens of thousands of passionate music fans like myself who grew up on Long Island at the same time I do. And to this day, we cherish our role in the history of rock music. I always knew you were as aware as anyone that among those music fans who lived on Long Island were the likes of Billy Joel and Pat Benatar and Eddie Money and others who came to know the music term, the Long Island Sound. The Long Island Sound, that was a phenomenon, part cultural, part socioeconomic, very emotional, very passionate about music. What mattered most was not whether the artist lived on Long Island, was born on Long Island, but if the artist played on Long Island a lot. And as a result they did, the Long Island music fans claimed that for their own. One of the more poignant descriptions of an experience which gives one a sense of understanding of the Long Island Sound is joyfully articulated by Steve Van Zandt, who actually comes from Winthrop, Massachusetts. And he describes a night in 1965 when for the first time he saw a performance by a then unknown group from Garfield, New Jersey called the Young Rascals. And Steve Van Zandt describes that night as having been both literally and positively revolutionary to him. It was an experience that changed his life forever. And when he describes that night, Steve describes an overwhelming sense of excitement and palpable feeling of soul. Soul which filled the hall that night as 4 white boys from New Jersey walked onto the stage and for 60 minutes became as black as James Brown or Aretha or any other artist those in the mostly white crowd had ever heard. During the 60 minutes, he says, those guys didn't just sound black. They were black, as they did their renditions of Wilson Pickett's In the Midnight Hour and James Brown's It's a Man's World. And during that 60 minutes, every single person in that mostly white crowd also became black and somehow understood what it meant to have soul and to feel the awesome sense of sexual and cerebral being which came along with that. So, even though Van Zandt came from Massachusetts and the Rascals came from New Jersey, what he described experiencing that night was a sound and a feeling which Long Island shortly thereafter claimed. And every artist like Billy Joel, who grew up on Long Island and was 17 years old or so at that time, they can describe how nights like that and live shows like that became uniquely Long Island, and how they had their own individual epiphany at the legendary Long Island clubs like the Action House. Chuck D, a Public Enemy, always asked me to tell him about artists who helped create the Long Island Sound, whether they came from Long Island or not. I enjoy, said the writer, telling him about Leslie West's original group, The Vagrants. The Vagrants, who would attract thousands of fans at every live show they played on Long Island. It was very special, certainly at that time, and Leslie, of course, had huge success at Woodstock and for many years beyond.